There have been many feature requests and wish lists for Solocran, so I thought I'd chip in my own ideas for features that I think people would actually use and be meaningful for the game, as well as still being down to earth and reasonable for KT to complete within this time frame of just over a year, as well as taking into account their budget and also development power. For the sake of not making this like an hour-long video, I won't be talking about returning features of TDU1 and TDU2 unless I want them changed in any way. And also I won't be talking about the majority of other things that a lot of other people have talked about. As always, I have included timestamps so that you can skip to all 5 of the main sections that we'll be talking about today. So the map might be an interesting place to start, since I did say things that they could do within a year. So these are kind of small things, but I thought it'd be best to get them out of the way sooner rather than later. The first thing that anyone requests for in an open world racing game is a racetrack, and frankly, we just don't get them in modern open world racing games. Thankfully, Horizon has noticed this with its LEGO expansion, and also in Horizon 5 it seems that we're getting 2 racetracks as well. You may recall that in TDU2 and TDU1 we had racetracks, and there were like shit tons of them, like plastered all around Oahu and Ibiza. So how many do I think that Hong Kong should have? So let's get some ground rules down. Let's just say that the entirety of Hong Kong is allowed. I still don't think there should be as many as TDU2 and TDU1 had. Those were very cool to visit, but they only had one layout, and there were just so many of them, and you couldn't quite recall like which one was which off the top of your head. It just got really repetitive for me. So what I think would be cool is if there were maybe 3 or less racetracks spread across the islands of Hong Kong. So one place that I think in particular would be really, really good to put like a big racetrack, maybe like Nürburgring sized racetrack, would be in Disneyland, where it currently stands on Lantau Island, I believe. And while Disneyland is cool and everything, and I think it would be a pretty cool vista as well, it just doesn't really add anything to the game, and I don't think that KT would realistically be able to get the license to put Disneyland in Solar Crown. So instead of putting their own version of Disneyland in game, I think what would be cooler is to have like a giant racetrack around there, something that takes like several minutes to get around. I think people would really enjoy that. And I did just mention how I don't like how TDU1 and 2's racetracks don't have multiple layouts. So maybe this one don't have a multiple layout if you're going for like that Nürburgring vibe, but the other ones definitely. So something I'm missing out on in Horizon 4, and now it seems in Horizon 5, is that Rallycross is my favorite track sport. And well, you just can't do that in these games. You either get full off-road or full asphalt, and there is just nothing in between. And while having different layouts would be really, really cool to have in a racetrack regardless, some of those sections could be off-road to cater for those that enjoy Rallycross and those sorts of sports. The next biggest thing that I think people ask for a lot are multi-story car parks. I mean, it's just the whole Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift vibe all over again. Whether it's just a local car meet or just having fun. The multi-story car park adds a lot of complexity to the city, and well, Hong Kong has quite a few of these multi-story car parks, but they also kind of need enough players to fill it up, because I remember there was one in Need for Speed Heat. I was really excited to sort of do car meets and play around there, and then when the game actually released, and like I could really only play with 8 people max. We basically just never used that shopping center or closed shopping center for car meets or anything. So hopefully it goes down a little differently in Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown. Walkable areas is also another thing I've heard a lot of people talk about. While some people, they want to be able to get out of their car like GTA and like walk around, but I think that would just be horrible, because either you're going to have cars ghosting through you while you're walking or vice versa, or you actually hit people. You have to introduce a health point system, and it's just not fun for anyone. So when I mean walkable areas, I mean areas other than your house, shops, casinos, just places to sort of meet up and do other things other than racing. It doesn't necessarily have to be mini game oriented, but just being able to walk on a pier or like walk in a park with your friends, maybe sit down, do something while you're chilling, that would be really fun. Would really add to its lifestyle element that they're going for. Finally, I want to talk about the car washes and kind of a fuel system perhaps in Solar Crown, since a fuel system is something that a lot of people talk about. So I'm sure a lot of us will remember the car wash in TDU2, but if I'm completely honest, if they try to do something like that now in 2022, I don't think it would go down very well. So instead, how about have a functional car wash, mechanical car wash? You actually had those in TDU2 where you could drive through them even, but they just didn't work. So maybe not even having to cut to a cutscene and being able to do this seamlessly in multiplayer and watch your friend drive through slowly the car wash thing, and his car gets cleaner as he goes through. That'd be quite fun to see. Just kind of add something to road trips or whatever, because let's be honest, that's something that people are going to be doing a lot. I remember doing that in the crew, to stopping over at a fuel station because we were doing like a coast-to-coast road trip, and well, the fuel stops don't work. And I know fuel is kind of a hard thing-ish to simulate, and it's a bit of an unnecessary thing, but I think it could be fun. Just something to think about that KT could add. And because you have the car washes, you could have the petrol pumps in the same location as the car wash, and then that together becomes like this sort of utility complex that you have in real life. So that's my thoughts onto everything to do with Solar Crown's map. Immersion has always been Test Drive Unlimited's strong suit, from having a 1-to-1 scale island and capturing the vibe of the island accurately, as well as dozens of other features that it had. So I thought I'd talk about some of the other things that could aid in that immersion to really bring the Test Drive Unlimited franchise to like a sort of 2022 and perhaps later standard. So starting off with an accurate day and night cycle. I know I said I won't be mentioning returning features, but this is just something that's pissed me off so much in Horizon. Horizon, if you don't already know, has a 1 hour 40 day-night cycle. 1 hour and 30 of those minutes are spent in daytime, and 10 minutes are in night. I understand that not everyone wants to drive in night, and probably the majority want to drive in the daytime. But it is just really annoying for those that have played the game for a long time or have spent a decent amount of time on the game and just want to be able to see time actually move. I will speak about it later as to how they could streamline this nicer so people can pick which one they want. And also a dynamic weather system is something I've spoken about in the past. Things like a cloud or a storm is coming in from the north of the islands and coming down to the south, and you can actually see the storm rolling in over the islands. That would really set the bar pretty high in terms of immersion. I mean, TDU2, you already had the weather channels for Ibiza and Oahu, so just having that as an extra bit of complexity would be awesome to see. Now, in TDU 1 and 2, you always had these planes that would take off, fly about, and actually land and taxi on the airport. And it just fascinated me so much when I was a little child, and I actually managed to get into the airport, watch them actually land and actually taxi to a gate. It was just so cool to see. So having those planes, maybe helicopters, drones even, in the sky to populate it would just be so nice to see. And that is kind of something that I want to talk about. See, when people think how do I make this city or this environment look more alive, when you're looking at a sort of, man-made area, it doesn't necessarily have to be nature or people that move around. It could just be cranes moving, cargo ships moving in the distance, whether they're low poly or even coming in to dock. I think that would really put the cherry on the top, including the planes actually taxiing in Lantau Airport or Hong Kong International Airport, whatever it's called. So having these small fishing boats or even the massive cargo ships, though, I think that'd be a bit too performance heavy to simulate every time. Just these little fishing boats coming into dock every once in a while. That'd be really cool to see and to add some immersion to Hong Kong's sky and waters that surround it. So that's something that KT could consider. So while we're talking about, vehicles, let's talk about traffic. And in TDU 1 and 2, it was really cool to see that the traffic would react if you try to head on them or something. They'll try and get out of your way. But unfortunately, it's a bit too sensitive if you're heading on or driving on the wrong side of the road, and you're not going to hit a traffic car, and then it just swerves into you. It's always the most annoying thing when you're driving at high speed. So just having that reaction, but maybe calibrating it to not be so sensitive, that would really be nice. And another thing I want to talk about in the traffic is just a bit of diversity. So when I say diversity, I don't mean 100 different multiplers, A4s, all of those weird ass cars, normal cars. I mean, you could spruce it up a bit. Maybe have a weird car, a supercar or a sports car in there, add that to the mix. And another thing you could see is police, ambulance and fire trucks actually being used, and them on a blue light, or actually using their sirens, chasers with police. Just adding more complexity to vehicles that they might already have in the game, ready to go. They would make city camouflage a hell of a lot harder when you're trying to find your friends and there's just a police chase going on, or an AI ambulance speeding past, and all the traffic moves over to the side or something so that it can pass through. That'd be so cool to see. But I know that it's also a pretty hard and complex feature that might not be done within a year. But if you do manage to do it, hats off to you, Katie. And finally, of course, I have to talk about pedestrians. Of course, this is something that a lot of people talk about, having pedestrians in a game. And honestly, the crew 2 did it amazingly. I already spoke about in the walkable areas part of when I spoke about the maps, that it would be bad to have GTA style or being able to get out and walk sort of thing. So I don't think you should ghost. I think you should pretty much, I can't really put in better words than just say do it like the crew 2. If you're gonna have pedestrians, just make us not be able to hit them. And yeah, I'd be really happy with that. It doesn't need to be that dense, even though it would be pretty dense in certain areas like around junctions, those sorts of things. But having some pedestrians would be nice. I know that there have been a figure of humans walking around Hong Kong in the Welcome to Hong Kong Island trailer, but that doesn't mean anything, honestly. Horizon 4 had pedestrians in its trailer, and it did not in game, so it means nothing to us, at least. But having pedestrians on the streets would be really, really cool. And especially as TDU 1 and 2, they had working traffic lights. So if you could have a red light and then the pedestrians able to cross when it's like a red light for everyone at a junction. That'd be, oh my god, could you imagine how amazing it would be driving around Hong Kong then? So yeah, that's pretty much all the things about immersion that I think Solar Crown could bring to the table. Convenience might be a bit of a weird title for this one, but I thought it suited the category the most. So we're starting off with the ability to switch server with 2 options of time. I got really sold on Need for Speed Heat's ideology of being able to go out of the garage in daytime or nighttime. I still think that they should have a day-night cycle, but what they could potentially do is when you switch server, you could have an option to change to a server that is the same in-game time as the server that you're currently on, or maybe a 12-hour jump in terms of in-game time in another server. So just having 2 options when you want to server switch. So like if you want to play in nighttime, you have that ability, or if you only want to play in daytime, you also have that ability. So just a bit more tools and power to the player so that they can play however they want. Like I already mentioned, it's a bit annoying in Horizon 4 when you want to take like a picture or just drive in the night and you just have to wait 90 minutes to be able to do so. So having this feature for people, I think they would really enjoy having this in game. Switching cars on the fly may be controversial, but it is something I really enjoy about Horizon 4. It just does it so nicely. You just hit pause, cars, pick the car you want, and bam, it's there. I understand the whole immersion thing of being able to go back to your house through the map or driving to there and then going to your garage where your cars are stored and then like picking the car or like getting out the list and finding which house your car is stored at. It's just a bit too much for me. Like when I just want to switch car, I want to switch car. I still think that should definitely be in game, and I do love that feature of storing cars in garages and having to drive over there or go to the map to do that. I think it's just something on top of what TDU2 and TDU1 already have that I think should be in game. The photo mode is something that I desperately need to speak about to KT. So in TDU1 and 2, I kind of hate the photo mode. Like the camera rotates around the car and it's horrible. You want to move somewhere and the camera's like, nope, you go in a 360-degree circle around the car. So just fixing that, being able to move the camera wherever I want and kind of look wherever I want and not just be like, feel like this magnet towards the car is there. I don't know, it's just such a weird feeling in both TDUSC and TDU. And also the ability to turn the UI off, because let's be honest, who actually takes photo in a modern racing game? I have never met anyone that does that, unless you play on console or something and you can't share your photo with other people. But if you're on PC, as far as I'm aware, everyone does this. You hit hide UI, you press print screen, and then you post it wherever you want to post it. So just the ability to hide the UI completely, and that includes the logo. I don't know what it is with game companies nowadays and thinking, okay, you must have our logo in your photo. Like, if people are wondering if this photo is real life or not, then like that's a good thing for the game. You don't need to plaster your logo all over the photo for that. And also, like, if people want to know what game this is, someone can just ask in whatever social media or whatever they're sharing what game it is, and they'll say. You don't need to put the logo there. It's just really obnoxious. Sure, you can have the feature to have it there and then not have it there, like the crew has. I guess that is some sort of way you can still have your logo if people prefer that, but I don't think I've met a single person that enjoys having a logo in the photo. So there's just my little mini rant about having logos in thingies. Also just the customization in terms of the photo options. I think a blend of Horizon 4 and what the Crew 2 has is really nice. I like Horizon's photo mode, I'll be honest. It just works. Honestly, some of the features aren't like, you know, as realistic as they are in real life, but they're simplified. There's no other word for it. It just works. Maybe being able to disable the players in their cars while the car is still moving might be something nice to actually have, since that is something that sometimes annoys me in Horizon 4. That'd be nice to have. And also, like the Crew 2 has, you'd be able to change the time of day and also the weather system, or like weather is going on right now. I know that would also, I guess, stop photo challenges in TDU2 being a thing where you need a specific car and specific weather conditions and time conditions. But to be honest, I would be willing to make that sacrifice, because me playing TDU World, I don't really feel that much need to do those photo challenges again. I'm happy with those photo challenges, being in different cars, you need a specific car, but it's just a bit obnoxious right now to have it with different in-game times and weather in terms of the trade-off of being able to customize the time of day and weather in the photo mode. Another thing I guess you could talk about are content creator tools, and when I say that I mean like a sort of video replay or like keyframing cameras, because like people make cinematics in racing games, that's just what happens. And one of my favorite people crowned that makes these cinematics in these games has left Horizon 4, which is arguably one of the best, if not the best looking racing game, just because it was just so shit to use when you wanted to make like cinematic videos and stuff. I can't blame him or her or them for doing so, but yeah, just maybe having a video replay, I don't know. It's a bit hard for me to get a grasp on what tools could potentially be in without having done like a proper cinematic myself. I've done one in Horizon 4 and know that pain. I actually used like the photo mode for the majority. I think all of it was in photo mode actually, so I guess that's kind of my experience in that regard. So yeah. Controls is going to be a pretty quick section, starting off with one major thing that I would love to be changed from Test Drive Unlimited 2, and that is the lights being able to be toggled on and off. Emphasis on toggle, because I remember having to hold down the enter key to pretend that my lights were on, and that was just really annoying. I know the enter key used to be just for flashing your headlight, which is cool, not going to lie, but being able to have them on and off on my own demand, that would be really nice. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the engine, and well, being able to turn the engine on and off is something I really like in Need for Speed Heat. Just being able to turn your engine completely off and on. You don't need that fancy air suspension thing that Need for Speed Heat has, but just being able to turn the engine on and off would be nice. It would also add to the police system that I sort of have in the works, but just having that as a factor for just cruising and turning your engine off and maybe using it for other gameplay features, that is just a nice tool that the player has to, I guess, add to their immersion, but I wanted to put it under here. And finally, the other thing is to completely hide the UI. Whether it's just driving without any UI, because I really enjoy that, in Horizon 4, because Horizon 4 is a really pretty game, and driving in first person with no UI because you have the speedometer, or driving in third person even, it's just really fun. And like, you know, you can play mini games and such as city camouflage, hide and seek, all those things that people are eventually going to be doing on this game once they're finished with their campaign. I'm not really going to be talking about many things in gameplay here, since these are features. So the one thing I wanted to start off with, which might end up being a bit of a rant, are the start of races in basically any modern racing game. I don't understand what's happened, and like the sort of need to show off a cinematic cutscene before the race, and when you're even counting down 3, 2, 1, go, or not even having that in the case of Horizon, just not being able to see your speedometer is the most annoying thing in a simcade game, which is why I'm fine with that sort of thing being in Need for Speed Heat and The Crew 2, but in Forza Horizon 4 and 5, and even TDU2, TDU1, it's just so annoying to play a simcade game and not be able to see your speedometer when the race is starting. In TD2, you get to see it for 1 second, literal 1 second, and you have that 1 second to make sure you're revving at the perfect RPM to launch your car, or well, you're not screwed, but you know, people that want to launch their car properly or learn how to launch your car properly, you just can't in these games, and I don't understand why people do this. Like, you know, we know that you have the ability to show us this cool cutscene of our car and show off our car. It is nice to see like a small cinematic, like maybe TDU2 had the first time you drove a particular race, but just having that when you're counting down from 3, I would love to just have 3 seconds where I can see my speedometer. Like, say I have a rear-wheel drive car with a lot of power, I obviously don't want to have to rev bang or just guesstimate what RPM I'm driving at, so please, just the ability to see the speedometer for 3 or more seconds. That is literally all I ask for any modern simcade or sim racing game. Another thing to do with racing is perhaps the AI that races them. One thing that really showed me as a big disconnect in Horizon 4 is that, well, the AI races all picked very similar cars, being like the Focus, the TT, everyone knows the cars that Horizon 4 likes using as AI racers, but that's not really the main thing I want to talk about. It's the fact that they all follow the same like railroad of a line, and well, I think this is pretty much the racing guy that they show for the player, but it's such a disconnect. They all drive one behind another like this cartoon almost, where they just drive behind each other like in a line. They don't overtake, they don't do any fun stuff. And really, I know that there's a lot of other games out there, but I'm just going to use Need for Speed Pro Street, since that is a game that I'm very familiar with in terms of how I would like AI to react. It doesn't need to be crazy, they don't need to total or anything, and they don't need to be like sort of grid style or Tokyo Extreme Racer style in terms of how the AI reacts, because I know those are very complex AI systems. I don't think it's really worthwhile the development time to have like AI racers that have that grudge. So just having more complexity in terms of the lines that the cars themselves take, and perhaps messing up a couple of AI racers, that'd be really fun to, I guess, see, and just add to the immersion, but also add to the gameplay of just being more fun and, I guess, complex for the player to have to think about how am I going to overtake this racer, and like just not knowing what the AI will do, rather than just knowing, oh, he's just going to take the best racing line, so I'll just go around him here. Another thing I would like is just the ability to drive solo in a race. And when I say solo, I mean properly solo, without AI. I don't know, it's just annoying to always be forced into an AI race all the time. That is something I would like there to be an option of having no AI or AI in your solo or even co-op races. So that's another bit that they could add. And finally, this doesn't necessarily add too much to gameplay, but just changes to the GPS in TD1 and 2 to have no player following the line. I know that that might be quite a controversial point, but I don't know, I look on the map when I'm playing these games and I don't really need to know how bad of a driver I am. Another thing though that they could add that I don't think any other open world racing game has right now are speed limits to the GPS, and that could be a pretty easy thing for them to add, but something that would be really nice to have. Me and my friends, we occasionally do like these convoy road trips around the map of Horizon 4 or The Crew 2, and honestly it's really fun just driving and cruising, but it's really hard having to squint to look out for these speed signs that might happen once every few kilometers in Horizon 4, and knowing, oh, that was a 50? Oh, okay. Well, oh well. So having something like that on the GPS would be really nice. It is something that GPSs do have in real life nowadays. So I guess why not have it? You have the signage in TDU2, and I'm sure they're going to be pretty accurate signage to real life in Solar Crown as well. So why not give us speed limits on our GPSs? Apologies if this sounds a little different to the rest of the video, but I wanted to talk about a couple of other things really quickly that I forgot to mention. Firstly being VR capabilities. That is something that somehow I forgot to mention, but it would just be insane to see these massive skyscrapers and buildings looming over you and also going through the countryside with VR. There are very few racing games right now that allow for full VR capability, so that is one thing to consider. Another thing that a lot of people mention about the WRC games that they seem to not have done in WRC 10 as well is to implement full rotation animation in first person of the wheel. I'm not sure why it's limited in these games, but I guess it's also not a massive detail in these games since they revolve more around the sim aspect rather than the sort of quality of life things. Lastly, Alex has posted a community manager and developer interview question intake on Reddit here if you haven't already seen, so I very much encourage you guys to go and ask something if you haven't already. So there's just that, so you don't miss out on that. And that's pretty much it from me. I hope you found some of these ideas interesting. As I said, I tried to make these as down to earth and also fun and creative as possible. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, maybe in proposing some of your own features as well. So that's all from me, and as always, thank you for watching.
Yeah.